Cormac McCarthy was a master of contrast, and one of his favorite uses of contrast was between isolation and community. And in All the Pretty Horses, he writes about this beautifully. Quote, and he felt a loneliness he'd not known since he was a child, and he felt wholly alien to the world, although he loved it still. He thought in the beauty of the world were hid a secret. He thought that the world's heart beat at some terrible cost, and that the world's pain and its beauty moved in a relationship of diverging equity, and that in this headlong deficit, the blood of multitudes might ultimately be exacted for the vision of a single flower. And when we look at a lot of our favorite Cormac McCarthy characters, whether it be Suttree or the kid at times in Blood Meridian, they are on this journey of isolation. I mean, just to name a couple more, obviously in The Road, in The Crossing, especially in the later sections with Billy Parham. Sheriff Bell in No Country for Old Men is isolated. Bobby Western, even Alicia. All these isolated characters create such a beautiful polarity with McCarthy because he's also offering us no interiority. So we have two drops in the bucket of nothingness when it comes to learning about our characters and seeing them function with others. And most Cormac McCarthy novels have very little plot. People have been like, Ian, you keep saying there's no plot in his novels. And it's like, if there is one, a lot of the time it's very small. And even characters like Suttree, who have Harrogate and are around people all the time, are existing in this web of loneliness. And that's why Suttree is rambling. That's why Billy Parham rambles into loneliness all the way until the end of his life. And this is obviously a mirror of what McCarthy was experiencing in his own personal life. McCarthy, for years at a time, was feeling isolated. And I'm sure as this talented writer and reader, he felt isolated from his wives when he did have them. Because I'm sure a lot of you guys have experienced this before, and I hope you don't have to do it anymore. But some of you guys out there have spouses or husbands, and they don't care about one iota of anything intellectual or artistic, or at least anything that you care about. And then you go to your job every day, and there are great people there, and they're super chill with you, and they're good to their families. But they want to talk about if the Texans are going to win the Super Bowl, or, current events. They want to say, oh, I love Israel, I love Palestine. But when you ask them, like, hey, have you ever read any books about the Israel-Palestine conflict? You're going to get crickets. And so we're wearing this mask of happiness and acceptance when deep down we're just screaming for some form of connection. That's literally why I created this channel and refused to do another YouTube channel that could probably get way more views. Because when I sit here and read your comments, I feel connected to something that I get with my wife and a couple of my friends, but they're busy. My wife and I both work. She's doing stuff with her friends. And a lot of the time we just want to connect on the level of love, not on the phenomenology of ontology. And so Cormac, decades ago, in an era where most people are Christians in the South, was experiencing this, I think, at a deep level. But from the start of his life, he had this pull for community. He was a Cancer. I know all of you guys believe astrology is bullshit out there. But when we look at his life, there are these trends of isolation and then this weird strive for community. We see him as a child, isolated from everybody, doing hobbies, going off on his own. Then he gets into high school, gets a little popular. But then toward the end of high school, starts to slip away and not really care anymore and starts to ditch school and whatnot. And then he goes to the University of Tennessee. And at those first 2 years at the University of Tennessee is everything that inspired Suttree. I'm sure it was just him drinking and rambling around and seeing all the crazy stuff in downtown Knoxville. Then we transitioned to him being in the Air Force for 5 years in the middle of Alaska, which has a hint of community, but his job was as a late night DJ, which is the most lonely job you can have at the base. After he comes back from the Air Force, he went to San Francisco and tried to join the beat movement, then returns to college and gets a wife, divorces her, leaves her when she has a baby, and sits in isolation for a couple years, marries again, is very social, but then leaves and exists in isolation. The cycle continues on, much like what these characters are going through. And most of the time, there is no apparent reason why they move into isolation. It's kind of this irrationality, but this is kind of a very common occurrence with men, that there's something speaking deep within us that calls us to ramble, that calls us to the road, that calls us to something deeper. And it's irrational to everyone else, and we just go off and do it. Because McCarthy's perception of communities are also somewhat flawed. Because when we look at Blood Meridian and the Glanton Gang, that is a community. A screwed up community, but they're still a group of friends and scalp hunters and rapists and many other things. They have many different titles. But what they're participating in is a group trauma experience. And a lot of us have community trauma because we were hurt by the group. This is something that Freud was hinting at the end of his career, but then Anna Freud took up. And it's some of my favorite psychoanalytical theory is that when we look at what hurt you, sometimes you guys, even if you were abused in a familial structure, there was probably someone there, like your mother, who was enabling it. There was a community, and you were being abused in a community. When you look at the public school system, I was bullied a lot, and the whole thing was enabled by everyone there, and I was hurt by the community. When I look at my experiences at university and like how everyone was acting like and acting fake and like looking at me like, why do you have these ambitions of waking up a billion readers? That's never going to happen. That hurt me. I've been part of countless groups and have received a lot of psychic wake from them. But when I look at my own life and like me on my own, there is a lot less of that. And obviously you need people and you need community, but a lot of us have been hurt by communities and then in that trauma think that the solution is more communities. It's like being abused by a meth addicted Hell's Angel and being like, hey, this heroin addicted Hell's Angel, he's going to be a lot different this time. And so McCarthy kind of rejects the idea of community and really focuses on the idea of friends. Because when we look at John Grady Cole and Rollins and Billy Parham and Boyd Parham, John Wesley Ratner and Marion Silder in The Orchard Keeper, there's this idea of friendship. But McCarthy also makes that a very tragic thing because a lot of us have also experienced a lot of trauma when it comes to friends. I'm not really going to give spoilers, but in all three of those novels I just mentioned, there is a separation and deep trauma between those friends. And then at the end, they end up back in isolation. And this is because life moves on. We don't, most of the time, stay with our friends, especially unless we stay in the same place and they stay there and every single night we get together and drink beer on the porch. That's a very rare thing. And I think McCarthy is talking about that and the loss of that because he experienced that. He had all these deep friends in Knoxville, but he wanted to move on. There's this unfortunate thing that's happened in the postmodernist world where we want more knowledge, we seek more, and we can transcend and make quantum leaps away from these people at home. Back in the day, that was a lot less possible. And of course, we look at people like Arthur Rimbaud and Henry David Thoreau and all the other Roes out there who gained knowledge and then left the community. But we look back at them in retrospect. At times, back in their times, it was a very aristocratic thing to do, to be able to go on this journey because you probably have some money and go on the journey to seek knowledge and all that. 99% of people didn't understand that idea. And a lot of people still don't understand that idea. I kind of suspiciously view people who are doing the whole Burning Man thing and like going on that superficial journey of individuation. Obviously, people who are going on an authentic journey and meditating and spending time out in nature and doing self-inquiry, like that's great. And that's always been the ticket to growth. But it also is somewhat weird that the people who go and they individuate a bunch, they usually do two things. They disappear or they create a community for the people who haven't individuated yet. And then lead people to kind of this mock process of individuation following the pattern they follow, but everyone's pattern is different. And so there's this massive paradox of connection in McCarthy's life and in his novels that all of us connect to. Like everything I just said is one of the reasons why this is so effective. This has literally been a problem since the start of time that a lot of us in society haven't fixed yet. There's the story of the wild man and that the king goes and catches him and has him locked up in the cage and there's a young boy and the key to the wild man is under his mother's pillow. And once you unleash him, then you can access, that deeper part of your male consciousness. And a lot of people have never done that yet. They've never retrieved it under their mother's pillow because they never even knew it was there. But I love McCarthy because he subverts the entire idea. He gets these characters who, go get the key. And we think that because of Disney or whatever, that once we do that, everything's going to be fine. There might be a little bit hard, be some trials and tribulations, but we'll be okay in the end. But it's actually more of a lonely journey. Once you go and do that, you're not just now awakened, but you're awakened to the absolute fatalism of reality. And that's where McCarthy just gets crazy. That's where I love McCarthy. And maybe even if I disagree with him, it's absolutely magnificent because we've all been there. We've all taken those steps. And then out in our loneliness, we're like, oh my God, this is terrible. And so I think this loneliness also impacted McCarthy's need to be such a fanboy of the Santa Fe Institute. He suddenly was a journeyman. He was someone who would never be as great of a scientist or mathematician as any of these guys. And you can kind of go on this lifelong journey of learning and have a stable group of friends that he could never touch in terms of intellectualism. He had always been the giant, and now he was the dwarf. And one could say that is a dream possibility for all of us. Being a part of a community where everyone is smarter than you and you have no chance of reaching them and you can just strive for continual growth and they all treat you with respect. That seems like a great proposition. And if they gave you that opportunity, I could see how you are a fanboy of them because you are grateful for what they've given you. I'm just kind of figuring this out now, but I could see I'm a little bit more sympathetic to that now and his involvement. They didn't need to take on this random writer and talk to him for hours on end when they could be doing it with someone who actually might help. In retrospect, Cormac McCarthy wrote Stella Maris, The Kukule Problem, and that was the end of his scientific contributions. I'm sure he gave them a lot of good laughs and a lot of good synapses with his wide expanse of knowledge. But they were working in isolated fields and didn't necessarily need that. But they understood that it was an important integral aspect to combine the arts and the humanities, and that's what Cormac's role was, almost as this representative, just like you should always have a logic bro in your group that you guys can laugh at and you're like, okay. But sometimes he says something, you're like, oh shit, man. Rationality actually came in hand in this situation. So what do you guys think about this parallel? I am also, if you guys have heard already, posting free daily discussions on my Cormac McCarthy course that is meant to take out the Cormac McCarthy subreddit. Because if you go to the Cormac McCarthy subreddit and hit new and look at all the new posts, they are a bunch of drivel. They are not diving deep. And my goal here is to drive us deep into Cormac McCarthy life, his theories, and so much more. And we're going to be doing that with text-based discussions on a medium that I feel like really works and has a space, because there's actually a character limit on YouTube and things get lost. YouTube censors people all the time. And over there, you can say whatever the hell you want. And so I will see you guys over there. I'm posting every single day. We already have day 2's discussion out where we rank Cormac McCarthy's Western novels. So see you over there. See you in the comments, or see you nowhere. Peace.